Hello, this is Mrs. Brown. We're going to be talking in this video about a character named Mrs. Dubose in To Kill a Mockingbird. And we're going to just take a brief overlook at her character, the role that she plays, and how Harper Lee created this character in the story. So first, just a basic overview of the character. Mrs. Dubose was one of Jem and Scout's neighbors. They had a number of ladies who seemed to live nearby. And the kids particularly do not like Mrs. Dubose. She seems to yell at them all the time, and she yells some pretty ugly and nasty stuff. She's often out on their porch, right where they have to walk by, so they have to go by all the time. And when they do, she yells out all of this racist and intolerant stuff. She yells at Scout all the time because she's wearing pants, and she yells a lot of stuff about the father. So much so that Jem actually gets particularly mad after she talks some trash about Atticus because Atticus is defending Tom Robinson, and Jem goes back and absolutely destroys her prized camellia bushes, these flowers that she spends all of this time on, and Jem just absolutely rips them all up. Later on, the kids learned that she was actually suffering from a morphine addiction. Her health had been declining for a number of years. The doctors had given her morphine to help her cope with the pain, and that she was trying to get off of it. She didn't want to be addicted to it. And Atticus ends up sending Jem to her for this long period of time to read to her. And Jem thinks that it's just his punishment because of what he did to the flower bushes. But later on, he learns from Atticus that Atticus really wanted Jem to learn a lesson about compassion and about moral courage, and to be able to see Mrs. Dubose in a very different kind of light. Now, Harper Lee uses some direct and indirect characterization to introduce us to this character. Like most things in the book, we first see her through Scout's eyes, and Scout says, "Jem and I hated her. If she was on the porch when we passed, we would be raked by her wrathful gaze, subjected to ruthless interrogation regarding our behavior, and given a melancholy prediction on what we would amount to when we grew up, which was always nothing." So you can see that Scout is telling you a little bit about this character through her eyes. The author also gives us some really good physical descriptions. Again, this is Scout's impression of this old lady sitting on the porch. It said cords of saliva would collect on her lips. She would draw them in, then open her mouth again. Her mouth seemed to have a private existence of its own. It worked separate and apart from the rest of her, out and in, like a clam hole at low tide. Occasionally it would say, psst, like some vicious substance coming to a boil. Now later on we find out that Atticus wasn't just trying to punish Jem, he actually wanted to teach Jem. And Atticus says, "I wanted you to see what real courage is, instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand. It's when you know you're licked before you begin, but you begin anyway, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win, but sometimes you do. Mrs. Dubose won all 98 pounds of her. According to her views, she died beholden to nothing and nobody. She was the bravest person I ever knew." And what you get out of here, along with this imagery again, is this subtext that this is really a character foil for Atticus. This is very much what he's doing by trying to defend Tom Robinson, by starting a fight that he knows is correct, even though he knows that it may not win. And remember, this chapter comes directly after the chapter where we see Atticus pick up the gun, and how impressed Jem and Scout were with this, that they never knew that their father was this great shot, and they watch him take out the rabid dog. So Atticus says, "I wanted you to see what something else is, another type of courage, is kind of inner moral courage, and not just taking up a gun and being able to shoot something." Now, this concept of moral courage, that Mrs. Dubose wanted to die beholden to nobody, and that she was willing to go through much pain in order to achieve this type of freedom, just demonstrates another example of this theme from the earlier quote that we saw where Atticus was talking to Scout about her behavior with Walter Cunningham, but this becomes an overarching theme for the whole story. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. So we see Mrs. Dubose here acting as a character, some great strong imagery and description, and a great way to help illustrate the theme a little bit more as well. And that's it.